I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. The IS has been a staple in the Lexus lineup for a number of years and one of the most fun luxury sporty cars to drive. So with that in mind, I figured we'd throw together a quick compilation of some of the best moments we've had with the IS over the past year. Let me know in the comments below what you think and grab some popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And today, we're gonna take a look at the Lexus IS versus the Acura TLX. But before we get into that, please make sure you like and subscribe to see more Lexus and automotive content that we have coming down the pipeline. So, taking a look at the front end, to my right here, you will see a beautiful 2021 Acura TLX, and let me tell you, when it comes to styling, especially, Acura has come a long way. Me personally, I haven't been super thrilled about some of the styling in previous years. I even had a 2003 Acura Integra, believe it or not. Maybe it was 2004, something like that. And the new lineup that they have is very different from that. So in the styling, we have a few big things to feature. So the first thing that always catches my eye with this Acura TLX, but almost anything in the lineup right now, is the headlights. It looks like there's at least 4 elements. They're kind of crystallized, giving that Swarovski, or however you say it, kind of vibe. And I really like that. And when they're on, they look even sharper. But also the daytime running light, I like that it's a little angle-ish. So what I mean by that is there is a really aggressive angle here in the corner, and it looks high-end. I really like that about it. Taking a look at the rest of the bumper, so we have sort of an upper grille and a lower grille here. The upper grille, nothing too crazy there. It's almost like a textured black or gray, so probably pretty durable since it's not painted. And then there is a section here that must be for the sensor, I'm assuming. We've seen that with a lot of other brands on the grille for that radar, cruise control, pre-collision system, all that. And they did their best to try and continue the grille in that flat piece, and from far away or on the road, you can't even really tell too much. And then they have that new Acura logo, which is really classy looking as well, sort of just a take on the original design. And then in Canada, that license plate bracket does cover quite a bit of the lower, but it does still allow a lot of air flow, I should say. Over to the left and the right, we do have sort of more of a fake grille decoration. So it is closed off. It's not a real grille at the top part or at the bottom. Probably what that's for is fuel economy. Obviously, we've seen a lot in design languages. There is a little bit of venting in the corner, just not in the middle. And our parking sensors is mounted to that same area too. Overall, pretty sharp looking, especially like I said, the headlights. And later in the video, I'll get to a point on the hood that you can see from the driver's side. That is one of my favorite parts about driving that car. Over to the IS though. So this particular IS is not a sport package. I will admit, most of the ISs we sell are sport package for new and used, but I love the color on this one so much, I was like, let's do a video on this one instead. So on the IS, so even though it's not a sport package, we still have that aggressive grille that you used to have to get to a sport package to get into, but now even with the premiums, the luxuries, executives, etc., you can still get that grille. So the differentiate between the front grilles are not as big a difference anymore, which is nice. It is complemented and decorated by this chrome piece here. Sometimes I'm into chrome, sometimes I'm not. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Let me know in the comments below. Is chrome still a thing for cars? I kind of think so. On this one, I like it. Maybe when it's not overdone. But it does have some chrome accents there. In the corners, we have a tiny bit of venting. But for the most part, it is kind of like that textured plastic, kind of like on the Acura. So nothing too crazy there. We do have headlight washers, which is super important to me personally, as I've told you before. And on the headlights themselves, we have an upper daytime running light at the top of the IS. So some Lexus models you'll notice have them underneath the headlights, some of them have them at the top. IS is one of them that has at the top, and I really like the way that flows to the rest of the vehicle, which is pretty cool. Then we just have the normal Lexus emblem. The grille itself is kind of like, it is a painted sort of metallic gray, so it's not the flat black, it's not the flat gray, it is painted, there is some metallic in there, which is nice, in a few different shapes. as well. And the way they design that grille is you can't really see the structure behind it, which is nice. I noticed with a lot of car companies, sometimes when they have too big of a grille, you can still see, you know, the support beam behind it. This one, you don't really notice. So super, you know, pretty looking front end on that. Okay, so taking a look at the side of this IS 300, the first thing you'll notice is the wheels. So on this particular package, it is sort of a bright silver multi-spoke. In the F Sport, it's more of that darker hyper silver with a different spoke setup. I think with the blue, this multi-spoke and how it's bright looks gorgeous. I think it's really catching, especially when in motion. You know, it's not super sporty, but it is classy, which I really like. Also, we see some features here like the black and body color of the side mirrors, and then a little bit of chrome there, and we have some chrome around the window frames, which tie in nicely with that wheel, as I mentioned. I believe in the sport models, it's more of a smoked chrome, or at least it should be, because of the smoked and darker wheel setup. In terms of the rest of the shape, we have a little bit of the textured gray at the or textured black at the bottom, but not a whole lot. It's really just sort of concentrated to the very, very bottom edge. And there is some flow to the door, so it does kind of go in and then get a bit wider as the vehicle sort of gets to the rear. Now, with the IS, Lexus always wanted it to be sort of a coupe attitude, almost like a small Grand Coupe, I guess you could say. And that's exactly what it looks like when you take a look sort of as a whole. You can tell it's not supposed to be a big sedan where, you know, you have a family in the back. It's more of like a two-door car that also has, you know, 4 doors. So I guess you could say it's like a coupe with 4 doors, you should say. So that kind of flows to the back and comes quite quickly down. Now, you will notice on the back door, the windows and pillars kind of stop on the door, so that as you get to that back quarter panel, there isn't any windows, it's just right to the bodywork there. And you'll see there is a decent amount of curvature here too, which depending on the color, I notice with silvers, you notice it more than the darker colors. This blue, you can definitely see it when you get up to it, the width of that. And then when you look at the silhouette of the rear, it's almost like a shelf. Like it kind of slopes down on that rear windshield and then really shelves off and has an aggressive sort of drop off, I guess you could say, like a cliff. Now, over to the TLX. A little bit different vibe here, and some would even wonder, why are you comparing the two? Because, you know, they're a little bit different size-wise, especially when you look at them from the side. So we do have more of a darker, this is the A-Spec, so we do have a darker sort of 5-spoke setup there. We do have the A-Spec badge, and then blacked out mirrors. It's more of the mirror that's blacked out, and just the base is actually body color. Flows, you know, quite nicely, but a little bit longer. We have, you know, some edging here that lines up perfectly to the door handles and flows to a little bit more aerodynamic back as well. But when you look at that rear door, there's something about it, I don't know what it is, but that whole section of the car reminds me more of a bigger sport coupe design. So something you would see in maybe, you know, a 6 Series BMW or an A6 or A7, something like that, where there still is a substantial door there, and the way that the shape goes is, I don't know, it's just very sporty, I guess you could say, which I love. You'll notice the way they've broken up the glass. So as that door ends, there still is glass over top of that rear quarter panel. We have that extra pillar here, and there's a nice little angle to that pillar as well, which is painted. At the bottom, we don't have any of that textured plastic, and the trim is sort of like a rubber. It's not chrome, it's not painted, so probably pretty durable, not sure. But just overall, the styling is really nice, and then it's more rounded body line, I've noticed, which looks pretty sharp, and then that sort of flows to the back, and that rear windshield, it's not super long, I guess you could say. Like, it's not like a lift back. It more does just drop off kind of like a normal real glass, I guess you could say. Okay, so before we take a look at the back of the TLX, we have to turn on the taillights because that is always super important to me when looking at the rear of a vehicle, and they're pretty good. I really like the shape of them. I like the way it flows kind of underneath and over. It reminds me of Jaguar. I think the only thing they could have done better, and maybe they did in the new models, is maybe just had them maybe just have them brighter, or maybe less texture on the actual lens itself and just more LED, I'm not sure. But still, like, especially at nighttime, it looks super sharp and very sporty, which I really like. Also back here, we have a painted black spoiler that definitely suits the car. It does not look aftermarket like sometimes spoilers do with car companies. The trunk itself feels big, like there's a big section here. Also has that Acura logo, and they've integrated the rear view camera just to kind of blend in there. You wouldn't even notice unless someone pointed it out. We have the SH all-wheel drive logo back there as well. And overall, the trunk space, not too bad, actually. You could definitely fit maybe 2 sets of golf clubs back there, and you could fold down the rear seats, which a lot of sedans in the luxury segment just use like a little pass-through. But this one, you could do the 60/40 thing. I did notice there under the fake floor is where the battery is, and I didn't see a spare tire there. So I don't know for sure, but it might be on run flats. I'm not sure. I didn't actually look into that until filming this. But otherwise, really nice rear end of the vehicle. It does have some features, you know, like this little corner here with the little reflector lamp, piano black bottom diffuser, and then the exhausts are kind of cool looking. They're a little wider. It's not like a quad exhaust setup or anything like that, but a little bit wider, a little bit longer, a little bit of chrome there as well. But overall, looks really good from the back, and I'm pretty impressed with Acura for that. Okay, looking at the rear of the IS, we'll turn on those taillights and see what we see back here. So I've always been a big fan of the redesigned IS. I love the taillight and how it goes all the way from one end all the way to the other and gets really thin in the middle there. It looks super sharp at nighttime, especially in a lighter color. For some reason, the whites and silvers. I'm a black car guy, but that taillight looks really good contrasted against one of those brighter colors. Other than that, not a ton going on back here. We do have a really big textured painted panel back here with a little bit of, you know, decoration to it. Also, just the shape of it is very IS-like. It does have a little bit of a drop-off cliff, as I mentioned. But also, on the rear taillight, there is a little detail that might remind you of previous Toyotas and previous Lexuses, and that's the vortex generator. So if we look here on the taillight, there's this little fin here. And if you don't know what that is, it's called a vortex generator. And I remember many moons ago when I started with Toyota back in like 2015, I watched a video on vortex generators because this was a selling feature we used to talk about to guests all the time. And what it is it just kind of, you know, the air going around the vehicle, it just kind of disrupted it to create a vortex. And in turn, that was supposed to give better fuel economy. So there's a little fun fact for you. Otherwise, we have 2 exhausts at the bottom. You can get a TRD accessory exhaust, which would make those a little bit bigger and definitely a lot louder. And, you know, in the trunk space, it is a smaller car for sure. So we could definitely do 1 set of golf clubs, maybe 2. However, you know, it's not that much deeper than that. So it might be a little bit tighter and, you know, nothing too outrageous in terms of space for being such a small car, but it's definitely usable. It's a little more practical than if you did get like a true coupe, like an LC or something along those lines. Okay, so on the interior of the Lexus IS 300, the one we're sitting in right now is the luxury package. So it doesn't have any of the F-Sport accents, like, you know, the way the seats hug you and stuff like that. So I actually find the seats are quite comfortable. They're still a smaller vehicle seat for sure, but they're not a sport seat where it's a small seat and hugging you. So depending on the vibe you like, I do prefer the sport seats based on my own personal preference. But taking a look at the rest of the interior here, we do have a lot of dark grays and blacks. So a lot of the finishes do have, you know, the piano black finish, which I like that. I think it is, you know, classier looking. It looks more high end than just having it a regular plastic. Even the bezels on the, you know, window switch is like that as well. And in the center here, we have the not that most, you know, up-to-date Lexus multimedia system. This one does still have remote touch and touchscreen. So both of them are integrated together. In the rest of the 2023 and 2024 models, we do have the new Lexus interface, which could be coming to the IS quite shortly, I'm told. So we have the choice, which is nice. You can be driving, use the mouse pad, or just touch the screen or use your steering wheel controls. So you do have a couple different options there. 2 regular cup holders, followed by our Sport, Normal, and Eco switch. Also, we do have a snow switch, and beside that is just traction control off with a brake hold switch below that. The shifter is that normal pattern that we've seen. You don't have to squeeze anything. In front of the shifter switch, we have our heated steering wheel, heated seats, and cooled seats. It may seem like a funny spot when you're sitting here in park because you can't see the steering wheel, but when it's in drive, you have full access to it and it's not too bad. Above that, however, when we look at the climate control panel, there's something on here that isn't in most of the Lexus lineup, and I love it so much. It's how to actually change the temperature. Instead of being a knob, it's this little slider. And it's both on the passenger side and the driver's side, and you know, I find it accurate where you can dial in to be, you know, 21 degrees or 20 degrees, or you could do it quickly. And it's just cool, I think. And it's something I've talked about in other videos, and I love it when car companies do something that isn't necessarily practical, but it's cool. And I find that with the climate switch, and they've been doing it in the IS for years, like probably since like 2015 or something like that. So pretty cool there that they've kept that. Above that is a really new modern clock, which, you know, as you remember from previous Lexuses, we've always had a clock in the middle of those 2 vents. And this one has sort of like a carbon fiber backing with, you know, a lit up dial sort of thing. And I just like it. I think it's cool. I don't know what you guys think. I know a lot of people, you know, could just say, I just look at my watch or the screen, but I like that it's there. It's just a nice little homage. Something else that's cool is when you put your foot on the brake and you're about to start the vehicle, this start switch, which is in a really nice spot, by the way, because you can see it in your eye line, does a heartbeat. And we see that in some other Lexus vehicles, but the IS was the first to get it. And I think it's cool because it's supposed to be the homage to, not the homage, it's supposed to be a hint at the thrilling, exhilarating ride you're about to have in your Lexus IS. Firing up on the screen here, we do have the split screen design, so a little bit of navigation. Again, it is the previous generation's model, so nothing too crazy there, but it does do the trick, I guess you could say. In the gauge cluster, so this one being not an F Sport, we don't have the TFT display inspired by the original Lexus LFA like in the other models, but we do just have, you know, a speedometer, a tachometer, a screen in the middle that you can customize to do different things like speed, cruise control, radar cruise, all that stuff. But most of it is actually analog on the luxury and premium packages. When you get into the F Sport, it's more digital for sure. But even though it is a luxury package, we still have a black headliner and black pillars, where you used to have to get those in the sport package as well. So overall, the IS interior definitely does the trick. It definitely is a little on the smaller side because it is a sports car, and I do need to tell you something about it. So when I first started in Lexus years and years ago, obviously I spent some time in the IS, I spent some time in all the vehicles, and I didn't notice something until someone pointed it out. And they said, I love the IS, but what about the hump? And I thought, what hump are you talking about? And right by the driver leg, there is a little hump. And the reason that's there, I'm sure, is because of some powertrain components. Don't forget, this is a rear-wheel drive platform that's all-wheel drive. So there is some true, you know, drivetrains and transaxles and all that stuff underneath there. And there is a little bit of a hump near the driver right leg. For me, I'm 6'1", and you know, I have long legs. I don't even notice it. It's almost like my leg goes right over top of that hump that they talk about, and I don't notice it at all. But once in a while, I'll have a guest mention that, you know, they noticed their leg was right up against it. So maybe if you're used to having more of an open space where your legs are, maybe you would notice it more then. But for me personally, I don't mind it. And actually, sometimes I lean up against it when I do notice it. So it's not a big deal for me, but to some people it is. So that is important to note. But other than that, I have no, you know, qualms at all with the interior of the IS. Okay, so in the back seat of the IS, I don't have a lot to talk about back here because there isn't a whole lot going on. Like I said, it's kind of like a two-door. The seat is set up for a 6'1" person behind a 6'1" person, and it is kind of tight. Not gonna lie to you, but you don't buy this car to have, you know, be driving around adults all day in the back seat for sure. The impressive thing is even in the back seat, the bezels for the window control switches are still that nice piano black. We still have a little armrest that can come down with some cup holders that can fold out of here somehow. So there is still some amenities back here. I did notice the drive shaft in the center does come up quite high. So having, you know, a fifth passenger here there wouldn't be many spots for their feet. And that just gives you an idea that this car was not made for the person in the back seat, but it does work. Like if I had to be back here by myself or with one other person, no problem, it'll work. Like my head is close to touching and maybe touching a little bit, but overall, not too bad. And even the handles up here have a little bit of rubber to them. There is a coat hanger there as well. So for what it is, not too bad, but definitely not a vehicle that was meant to, you know, taxi people in the backseat around. Okay, so sitting in the TLX, there is a lot to go over here. And I'm not really trained on this car, so I'm sure I'm missing a lot of different features. So if I am, put in the comments below and let me know if there's anything that I missed. But first impressions, pretty good space. So really nice layout. There is a lot of different angles and, you know, surface areas. And colors too. So we do have a little bit of chrome, we have a lot of gray, a lot of black, and a really nice red ambient lighting, which the fact that this car is red does also kind of suit well together. One of the first things I noticed when I got in for the first time was I could see where the four-way button is. I know that sounds silly because how often do you touch the four-way button? But I'm telling you, if you could just know where it is without having to think about it, that could save you in the event of a breakdown, getting hit by another car, something like that, when you could just quickly see that and switch instead of having it blended into the rest of the buttons. So that's pretty cool. I also noticed how big the center armrest is and that your phone, the charging system for your phone, the wireless charger, is right here. My massive Galaxy Note phone fits there quite nicely. We do have a big center space as well with some charging in there. A couple more cup holders. Now, the little touchpad that's here was tricky for me to get used to at first, but I did get used to it. So the trick with this one, from what I can tell, and I might be wrong, is when you gently touch it or swipe it, it'll change the pages that the multimedia is doing. But when you hold it, that's when you can actually select an icon. Now, the little area to the right controls the screen to the right. That's pretty self-explanatory. And we have, sort of on its own little island here, the volume knob. So I love that when cars still have a volume knob. And underneath that is the next and previous track thing. So I like the simple design of this for the multimedia system. It's easy to get to and easy to see, and that's pretty cool to me. Above that, we do have some piano black, and we do have the shifting setup here. This one was a little harder for me to get used to. In fact, the first time I went to drive it, someone was distracting me, and instead of putting it in park, I put it in drive. I think maybe I thought that was where the start was or something, but the drive is that big button there, and then we have reverse kind of tucked away and park above it. Probably pretty easy to get used to after driving it, you know, twice or something like that. Then we have this massive button for our dynamic driving modes. So same thing, Eco, Normal, and Sport. We have some heated seats and some climate control above that. From what I can tell, there is no CD player, which obviously is not a big deal, but the materials in the cabin, for the most part, are a nice quality. So it seems to be soft touch with some stitching for most of it. We do have some textured, sort of aluminum looking plastics as well, which again, feel pretty good. Acura did take a few shortcuts, but they're not the end of the world. One of them, which was an interesting one, is the door switch bezel. So where those window switches are, it is sort of like a cheaper textured plastic, but like I said, the rest of the interior is absolutely gorgeous. So it's not a big deal. You wouldn't even notice it if I didn't point it out. And the only reason I pointed it out is that the IS had that going for it, where it still had that nice piano black. But other than that, a few things on the steering wheel. We have, you know, everything from a true volume up and down. We have a couple wheels to do things. We have, you know, the cruise control, the heated steering wheel button is on there as well. Some paddle shifters behind the steering wheel. Some other safety buttons that, again, I haven't been able to go through in such great detail, but there is a lot going on here. And this particular one seems to be a pretty well-equipped one too. So I'm very impressed, Acura. I'm not gonna lie to you. You guys did a great job on the TLX. I haven't spent a lot of time with other, you know, Acuras around the insides of them especially, but this one seems to kind of hit all the necessities and do it in a sporty and classy way. Okay, so in the Acura TLX, as mentioned before, there is a styling feature that I absolutely love when driving it. Last night when I took this home, one of the things I noticed on the highway is when I have my hands on the wheel and I'm looking down the road, the way the hood angles up on the sides, so like those visual lines, they look really nice in this car. It really gives me sort of a false perspective of how aggressive the front end of the styling is or how wide it is, but I really like the way it looks when you're in the driver's seat and you're looking down at the hood and you can see sort of those angular humps on the hood. Okay, so sitting in the back of the TLX, we do have some more room here than the little IS 300 back seat that I was just in. Again, 6 foot to 6 foot, I have some space here. I did notice the back of these seats are a little bit harder plastic, but I am quite comfortable. And that front, like the front dash seems like it's a mile away from me right now, which is kind of funny. But back here, you know, a little bit wider as well. I should mention, there is a really nice texture to the seats. It's a soft leather or synthetic leather, I'm not sure. And there is like a little suede insert too, which is quite nice. There is the drive shaft down the center, but it's not quite as tall as we saw on the IS. We do have some venting back here as well, and a decent sized armrest with some cup holders and a little other holder there as well. My head seems to have decent space. There might even be a speaker above my head because this one does have the 3D sound system. I'm not too sure if that's what that is, but I'm sure it is. And overall, pretty decent, so you could be back here for a longer period of time. It is more similar to that ES 350 that Lexus has for sure, even though the ES probably is a little bit bigger, but it's still not too bad. So you could have people back here all the time and be fine. Okay, so what about the powertrains? The TLX has 2 engine options from what I can see, a turbocharged 4-cylinder and a turbocharged V6. This particular one is the V6 that I drove last night. It's around 355 horsepower to a 10-speed transmission, and sometimes it felt like it really wanted to go. Not all the time, but definitely sometimes. The IS, on the other hand, has probably too many engine options to choose from. We have a turbocharged 4-cylinder in the rear-wheel drive model. We have a 260 horsepower V6, and then we have a 311 horsepower V6, and on the IS 500, you can even get the V8 model. So lots of different options there. This particular one is the IS 300, so that's that 260 horsepower powertrain. So which one would you guys choose? We have the TLX that, you know, is a little bit bigger, a little bit more back seat space, a little bit more cabin room, or the very athletic IS for those people who wanted a coupe, but should probably get a 4-door for those times that they need to drive people around. Either way, both are great cars in the sporty sedan segment of the luxury market. There still is buyers for it. There still are people buying sedans and coupes. It's not just all SUVs. So if you want to have some fun, both are a great choice. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe to watch other videos from us. We have lots of other comparisons coming up, and maybe even some real world demonstrations. We're gonna answer the question, which car is better for you? The Lexus IS or the Lexus ES? But before we get into the video, make sure you hit subscribe and like and go back and watch any of the other Lexus content we've done in the past, because there is some pretty good stuff there. Okay, so let's just get right into it. So the blue vehicle to my right is the Lexus IS 300 in the luxury package. On that front grille, we have sort of similar to the Lexus spindle grille on some of the sport models, but honeycomb design, trimmed off with some really nice chrome pieces. And you'll notice as we move to the headlight that the daytime running light is on top of the headlight. It is really sharp. Not all Lexus models have it on the top, but it does look pretty cool. And this one has the single LED light bulb. Now, we do have a headlight washer, which is super important to me living in Canada where there's salt and everything else on the road. So it's nice to be able to wash off those headlights once in a while. And sort of as that flows down to the bottom of the bumper, we do have a little bit of venting on the sides, but since it's not the sport model, it's mostly just rounded off, an actual big solid body panel, which looks pretty nice. I think it's a classy front end for a car that's already kind of sporty. So even though this isn't the sport model, it still is kind of sporty. So there's that. Now over to the ES. This particular ES is the F Sport design. This is a brand new package in the ES configuration and I absolutely love it, and you'll see why. So we have a big spindle grille on this. This is an F Sport spindle grille. So you can see it does look a little bit more aggressive. There's a lot more of those little hatchings going on, and that's also trimmed off by a smoked out chrome piece, which is really sharp. I just love how dark chrome and smoked out chrome looks. I think it's sporty and modern, so super happy to see that there. And on that grille, we do have hidden some parking sensors that you can't really see because they are black, and Lexus did a good job of hiding those. And the headlights have the daytime running light underneath. So now we see it underneath the headlight. This one still also has the single LED filament. The higher packages give you the triple beam, the adaptive and all that stuff, but still looks pretty sharp there. And then underneath that, we have some more F Sport grillage happening on those corners. Not a whole lot of active venting there, but still looks pretty sharp. And it makes that front end look quite big. So when you compare it to the IS, it looks a lot wider because it is. And it does just have a little bit more presence than the smaller, sportier front end of that IS. Now, in terms of power plants, we have a 3.5 liter V6. On this one, it's the older V6 design. So I think it's around 260, 270 horsepower, all-wheel drive. And on the ES, we have just over 300 horsepower to an 8-speed transmission, front-wheel drive. And they do handle very differently in that sense, but I'll get to that later. So looking at the side profile of the ES350, we have a little bit more rounded body lines, and it is a much bigger vehicle than the IS per se. So there is a little bit more, what's the word? Landscape, I guess you could say, to have that roofline taper off to the bottom. So it's not quite as an aggressive angle, but still looks really good. The side body lines are a little more rounded, a little less jagged and sharp, but definitely suits that mid-size sedan type look. And in the F Sport design package, we have a fully gloss blacked out rim, as well as, body matched door handles, but the tops of the mirrors are blacked out as well. Over to the IS, the fact that it's more of a sporty, smaller sedan, we have more sharp edges. So even, looking down the side here, I see a little bit more jagged lines and a little bit extra angles. And then even the roof line and the silhouette of that starts off tall and then more rapidly goes down. And even you'll notice on that back door with the chrome trim is actually stayed on the door. It doesn't overlap onto that rear quarter panel, which the quarter panel, by the way, has an absolutely huge curvature to it and looks beautiful. Over to the back though, this is where things get changed up a little bit. So the back of the IS to me has always been super beautiful. So we have sort of more of a shelved off top end of the trunk, and then it really goes down like a cliff, but the taillights is where it's at. So the taillights on the IS have that design that sort of go from one side all the way to the other without breaking stride. And from far away, it looks super sharp, like a katana sword or whatever samurais used to use in Japanese culture. Really nice homage to that, really sharp. And even in the middle, it gets super thin, but still is there. Now the trunk space on the IS is usable. It is usable. I would say you could fit one golf bag and maybe a fold-up cart if you're lucky. It is wide enough at the opening of the boot there, but as it gets kind of into behind those back seats, it is a little bit more narrow. But those back seats do fold down 60-40, and not every sedan in this class does that. So if you were gonna bring two golf bags, you could just fold down those seats and stick them right into the back of that. Now, over to the back of the ES. So looking at the ES, the taillight design and the rear design, all of it is super different from the IS, obviously. So we have more of a sloped off top of the trunk down to, the drop off, not quite as aggressive shelf design as in that IS. We do have smoked out chrome on the back of this ES as well, and a really nice diffuser at the bottom in that piano black / metallic gray configuration with the exhaust integrated into that as well. So that looks super, super sharp. The taillights. The taillights more remind me of the GS 350 or, the LS 500 and 460, where there's a little bit more layers to it. So, we have a few different layers here. Actually, the LC 500 would have this happen, but more in that hologram mirror image. But still super, super sharp, gives it a different presence, and, also makes the vehicle look a little bit wider because of the fact that they're not conjoined. This one has the F-Sport spoiler because it's the design, and you'll see a whole lot of accessories in here right now. But the trunk is absolutely massive, especially compared to the IS. I would say it's wider, it stays wider for longer as you look into it. You could definitely put 2 golf bags back here, but the seats don't fold down. The back seats don't fold down. There is a pass-through for your skis. That's usually all that's really good for. But the reason a lot of brands do that, or a lot of cars do that, is I've heard, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it does help with road noise. So having that trunk fully sectioned off instead of more of a doorway opening, to back there, does create a little bit quieter ride versus, otherwise. So sitting in the ES 350 in the F Sport design package, there is a lot going on here that I want to talk about. But first, before I do any of that, I'm going to do one of the most satisfying things in any purchase of anything, and in cars usually it's already taken off, but when you buy a brand new TV and you take off that plastic, I have the opportunity, one of the perks of working at a dealership, of taking this off. There is not a lot of things in life that feel as good as that, let me tell you. Anyway, okay, in the interior, we have the light brown Palomino leather upholstery here right now. Also, all the accents in this package are really interesting because it's like a brushed aluminum, but it's black. It's like a dark brushed aluminum, which to me, it's kind of like a young person's car. I don't know if that's what they're trying to do with the ES, but I really like that. I think it's cool. Also, we have the armrest that opens both ways, which is becoming quite normal in Lexus vehicles, but I love it. Also, we have a wireless charger right here, and Lexus did a good job of future-proofing that because they don't have a lot of walls around it, I guess you could say. And the reason I mention that is cars, 5-6 years ago when they started to come out with wireless chargers, or phone holders for that matter, they realized that phones kept getting bigger, and then the phone holders were out of date by the time they already got out because the phones got so big. This one, I feel like even if phones got bigger or smaller, it would still work, although I don't know how well it would be if you're doing some cornering and having your phone slide around. We do have some spacing up in the front of the cup holders as well, which I would assume is for your phone because there used to be a phone holder there on previous model ESs. And below that, there's a little trap door that I didn't notice until right this second. And it's a way to hide, the USB-C as well as the regular USB. And actually when you open it, it kind of goes down into itself. And then when you close it, it actually comes right back up flush. So nice touch there, Lexus. I think it looks great. Above that, we have our heated and cooled seats. We have our climate control, this massive screen that pretty much comes standard in all of the ES packages, except for maybe one, but massive, really HD. We don't have any controller. It's just touchscreen now, which is great. That's what everybody wanted. We have some other trim pieces happening where it's a little bit of brown wood on, the upper door panel, as well as the dash and steering wheel. But one thing that they kept that I love is the real aluminum piece here on the door, which is right above the floating door handle. So overall, really big design. I feel very spacious in here. I will mention that the headliner is also the brown, which that's something I can't stop looking at now that I noticed it, but I'm sure with other interior colors, it's probably the gray or black. But overall, very luxurious, very big interior, super comfy. Sitting in the back seat of the ES, I have a ton of room back here. It's like sitting on a big couch. And actually, when this car got redesigned back in 2019 or 2018, they said that there's more space in this now than there is in the current model LS 500, which is a big deal. I think it was like legroom or something like that. But I have a ton of headroom, I have a ton of legroom. The seat is super comfortable. They didn't take any shortcuts for the rear seat passenger. We have a couple of USB-Cs here, a 12-volt outlet. Also, this massive armrest that can come down with 2 cup holders, and it feels substantial. It's solid, it's really big. We have a pass-through there, and I think I could sit back here with 2 other people, no problem, and be comfortable for like a longer journey, which is saying a lot. Sitting in the front seat of the IS now, and it's a whole different vibe. Right away, there is a lot more dark colors, and even on the IS, since most people buy them for the sporty design, we see more reds and blacks interiors, but there definitely is, a few other lighter colors, but the accents and everything is more, gloss black, a lot less textured materials, but, everything's a little bit closer to you, and a lot of people like that. They like not having this massive area in front of them. They like to be hugged, they like to have everything close by, and that's what this IS does. We have the Lexus touchpad here, still to remote, and also touch screen, so it does give you both of those worlds. The armrest opens this way, so I guess you could access it from the passenger seat, but it is a smaller console in general, and like I said, everything's just a little bit closer to that driver, but some nice still aluminum, a little bit of dark grays, things like that. In the sport model, we have things like the LFA TFT display and a climate control that works a little bit differently, but the clock in the IS is gorgeous. It's super modern. It reminds me of like a high-end modern watch with some carbon fiber, with a nice Lexus logo backlit, and I think they did a great job on that. But overall, it just feels really sporty in here. The backseat of the IS is another different vibe as well. It is a lot more cramped back here because don't forget, this car is supposed to be kind of a coupe with 4 doors. And that's exactly what it feels like. I'm 6'1", I can fit back here. My head's touching a little bit, my knees are touching a little bit. I definitely wouldn't want 3 people back here because there is a little bit of a hump in the center for that center passenger. But another person back here, we could definitely go out to a restaurant, go for a drive. And sitting in here, it actually helps me notice how much smaller the seats are. So the ES has a much bigger, substantial seat material and frame to it. These ones are a little bit sportier and smaller. We do have a little armrest here with a little fold-out cup holder that I always struggle with, but it is there, so you can use it. And again, it's not pretending to be a big luxury sedan because it's not, but the backseat is usable. So how do they drive? Well, the IS has done a great job of keeping that low center of gravity, all-wheel drive, feel like you're on rails when you're cornering, makes commuting to work an absolute blast. Being able to weave around nice corners at maybe the sacrifice of fuel economy, because this all-wheel drive system with this V6 isn't the best on fuel. It's still okay, it takes premium gas. And the ES has a little bit more of that soft, cushiony, quiet ride. Still enough power that in a straight line, you could step on it and go. Takes regular gas, so a little bit better on gas as well, the fact that it's front wheel drive. So the answer to the question, which one is right for you? Well, I would say if you want something that's all-wheel drive, sporty, you don't care if you need anything in the back seat very often, maybe just a couple friends once in a while, the IS is an absolute pleasure to drive, and that could be the car for you. However, if you favor fuel economy, you want a little bit more horsepower, but you don't care about the handling as much, or you don't care about the all-wheel drive, or if you do want to have some space for people in your backseat, then the ES is the one for you. Standing here today at the Toronto International Auto Show, beside me right now is a very special IS 350. This particular one has the special appearance package, which gives it the two-tone black and gray look that you see here. Now, the IS was redesigned just a few years ago. It was supposed to be a full refresh, but they kept a lot of kind of the bones and frame and powertrain and just improved on it a little bit. So for this model here, we have the triple beam LED headlights with that spindle grille. Now, I really like how the two-tone, the black kind of flows into that spindle grille that we've seen so many times in the F-Sport world. Also, you'll notice we have some active venting at the bottom of the bumper, right here, as well as the sides of the bumper too, which gives it that really sporty, aggressive front look, which in my opinion, the IS absolutely matches perfectly too. I wouldn't even look at another package if it was up to me. Now, with that two-tone special edition, we see the black flowing all the way up to the top and towards the rear of the vehicle, and it matches really nicely with those corners of the bumper, in my opinion, as well. with some really nice wheels. Taking a look at the side silhouette. So when they redesigned it, they did elongate that long coupe style rear portion of the vehicle that kind of ends up as like a shelf towards the back of the trunk. So instead of flowing down, Lexus decided to kind of have it slope off and then drop. So it kind of looks like more of a grand coupe design, which I love. And it was one of the first vehicles with that new taillight. So kind of that infinite style taillight that goes from one side of the vehicle to the other. At nighttime, it has a beautiful presence to it. And while we're at the back of the vehicle too, you'll see that bottom portion and the black really ties together the rest of it. So even though the black on the roof stops above that rear windshield, it kind of continues on at the bottom of that bumper, which to me just kind of catches your eyes and draws them into the bottom rear diffuser as well. So taking a look at the rear seat of the IS 350, it's kind of designed like a four-door coupe. So there's not a ton of space back here. You can put some people back here if you wanted to for short trips and stuff like that, or maybe perhaps if you have children. However, for being a little bit taller, it's not the most comfortable, but it works fine for what it is. Probably if I was sitting in the front seat, this would be back just a little bit more. However, I could still fit back here, and I'm about 6'1", and it still has the armrest that you can put between the two passengers in the back, and also a little cup holder that kind of folds out of this. So it's not terrible. It is definitely a sportier car though. So in the front seat and the driver's seat, there's not a whole lot of changes here over the last couple of years. However, we do have the latest Lexus multimedia system, which is a huge improvement. And we still have the nice little Lexus touchpad as well as touchscreen. So you can use both of them together, which is nice. We have a couple different drive modes, and this one being the IS 350 Special Appearance Package, it has Sport Plus. So you can really tune the drivability of the IS, which to me is a huge characteristic of this vehicle, where it's kind of a car you can drive to work every day and still take on some windy canyon roads and be able to have fun with it without it making you sore from like a rough ride or anything like that. So huge benefit to be able to tune the suspension and the drivetrain. We also have some really nice piano black kind of instrument trim here with a really cool Lexus clock. It's kind of a new version of the traditional Lexus clock that we've seen in the lineup. It's got kind of like a carbon fiber face to it, which is really cool. And it lights up quite nicely too at nighttime. And the IS, if you've ever sat in one, when you sit in it and put your foot on the brake, before you're able to start, you'll see the start-stop engine button kind of beat like a heartbeat. So you can actually see it kind of beat, and that's supposed to be kind of a hint to the exhilarating drive you're about to have, which is a cool little Easter egg not many people know about. Another thing that I can't demonstrate right now, but I will show, or will talk about it, is the LFA-inspired instrument panel. So when you press one of the buttons on the steering wheel, that mechanically moves over just like in the LFA supercar and exposes a little bit more digital stuff like G-force meter, fuel economy, stuff like that. And then you can press it and move it back. So none of that is like digital through a screen. It's actually physically moving, which is a really cool thing. So if you're coming to the Toronto Auto Show, definitely check out the IS 350 with the special appearance package. This might be one of the last times Lexus uses this 3.5 liter V6. It's so important to the lineup for so many years. So if you're in the market, I would get your hands on one of these while you still can, because this is definitely a model line that's probably gonna go hybrid in the next couple years. So check it out.